Good morning, Dave, and welcome to Inspiring Courage podcast. Thank you for being my guest today.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation and greetings from a very damp and grey France.
I think we can say that it's a little bit damp here as well, but I'm braving it outside. So for the first time, we might have slightly better weather than you because it's not raining. So it's really good to have you on the show. I've met you recently during lockdown, so you've been one of my lockdown gifts. We connected over a Zoom call after we met at an event online, and after we connected on LinkedIn, and then in true Wafa style, I asked for a conversation, a human conversation, and then we discovered how much we have in common. So that's my constant message, that connect with people so that you can find similarities and commonalities and kind of bring your strengths together. So one thing that really struck me about you was your beautiful entrepreneurial journey and how varied that has been. And that's something that I would like you to talk to us about, if you don't mind. Let us know where you've been and where you've come from and where you are now.
Gosh, how long have we got?
Lots and lots.
So if I go right the way back to as a kid, we had the family, we had shops, and mum and dad had a number of shops in and around Birmingham in the UK. And I was due, at least I thought I was due to go into the business and follow my dad's footsteps and run the shops. And then got to the age of about 14, I think it was. And my dad said to me, look, the business is not going to sustain for you. You need to go and get yourself a job and get yourself a career and do something else, because we were in the fruit and vegetable, fish, poultry market, and the supermarkets were opening up and they were shutting down all the small businesses. But of course at school, I hadn't done much at school because I thought I was going to inherit a business. So I didn't do really well at school. And I left school at 15 with nothing, pretty much no qualifications at all. And I was lucky to find an apprenticeship, what I call a proper apprenticeship, an engineering apprenticeship in London. So I went from Birmingham down to London, did my engineering apprenticeship, and that was for about 5 or 6 years. So I started out as a weapons engineer for Royal Ordnance, specialising in sniper rifles and assault weapons, machine guns, and did that. And then, but I met Lynn when I was 15, and we're still together now, all these years later. And we just decided as two kids to go on this sort of adventure. We had no clue what we were doing, not a clue. And we just, let's have an adventure, let's go and travel and see the world and all this sort of thing. And that sort of guided us, really. So for both of us, we've had independent careers, but always stayed together with the boys and the kids and that sort of thing. But no, from there, my career went into logistics and transport and packaging, to manufacturing, and we were in military subcontracting for a number of years. And then I was fired. I was actually fired from a job. I was in Southampton and I was fired. I was operations manager. I would have been about, how old would I be? 28, 29 or something like that, young operations manager. And I remember that the guy, my chairman came to me with a set of accounts, wanted me to sign off a set of accounts. And I refused because I knew there was something in there that shouldn't be in there. And I said, I'm not gonna sign these accounts for you. I remember saying to him, he said, if you don't sign them, I'm going to fire you. And I remember thinking to myself, what do you do? Do you go for it, sign it, and be comfortable, and all will be okay? And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. So I said, well, do what you like. I'm not signing it. So he fired me. And he was like, oh my God, he wasn't kidding. This is quite. So I went home to see Lynn, and Richard was about 6 months old then, baby in arms, and John was about 3. And I got home and said, I've been fired. And it was like, what do you do now? It was just that one of those, I can remember the day, it was horrible because he had mortgage and kids and all this sort of thing. We sat there with nothing in a strange town. We'd only moved down to Southampton about 2 years ago. And it was one of those days when I thought, this is it, my life is over, career is over, I'm never going to recover from it. And Lynn found an advert in I think it was the Sunday Times newspaper in the UK. On the front page of the Sunday Times, a little advert, and it just said that there's a company looking for an operations manager in London. Applicants should apply. And they were in the the fabrics industry or something like that, something bizarre. Anyway, I got a phone call and I said, got to go for an interview in London. And I drove from Southampton to Mitcham, South London, for a group interview, and this company, they made ballroom dresses for professional and amateur dancers. So Latin American, big feather boas and pearl chiffon, all this sort of thing. Fabulous, fabulous dresses. And I'm sat in this group interview with guys and gals there from the West End, from Savile Row, from the theatre, from the Royal Ballet, all looking for this job to run this company for these entrepreneurs. And they went around the group and they said, what was the last job you were involved with? What was the last project you were involved with? And the guy next to me had been involved with a couple of West End theatrical productions. One of the girls had been involved in a Shakespearean production. And he was like, wow, these guys know about fabrics and clothing. And they said to me, what was your last project? Well, my last project was manufacturing an aluminium case for the periscope on a nuclear Trident submarine. And it's like, and I just felt totally out of my depth. And anyway, had lunch, drove home, and by the time I got home, one of the guys, Roger, as it happens, one of the directors, had phoned Lynn. This is before mobile phones. Had phoned Lynn and said, "We want to see David tomorrow." So I went back up there in the morning, and they offered me the job. So I went from weapons and rockets and guns and sort of manufacturing bizarre sort of things into running a dressmaking business, and it was really, really hard. But the lesson is you don't have to stay in one straight line all your career or all your life. And that taught me a huge lesson. So being fired was the best gift I was ever given. Absolutely. It was just, in hindsight, I want to go and get hold of my chairman and give him a big kiss, because that was just the best thing he ever did for me. It didn't feel like it at the time. And then from there, the career took off in a real, bizarre way. Went into aviation services. I ran Heathrow, Gatwick and Stansted for an airline. We ran our own business, transport and warehousing, distribution, recruitment. Also, it went off all over the place. And then we started this business 20 years ago, and that then took us all over the world. So that's a very sort of short version, if you like,
I love it.
Disjointed career so far.
I just love it. And there's so many questions. There's so many things I want to say. The fact that you were so resilient, the fact that there was no in your vocabulary, because being from the background that you were, working in the weapons industry, that's such a Boise thing, isn't it? Who wants to go and start fiddling around with material, ball gowns? That's just the polar opposite almost, isn't it? And I did get
my leg pulled quite a bit about that, I have to say.
Do you know, but there was no in your vocabulary, and you did it, and that is something that then led you into a different role altogether. And it just shows the level of resilience that you have, the confidence that you have in being able to deliver in more than just one area of life and expertise, because your expertise is just so transferable. Your skills are so transferable from one to another profession. And the fact that you just don't mind trying it, stepping outside of that comfort zone. As you say, do not put yourself into boxes. And that's what really, really impressed me with you when we first spoke. I just thought, wow. And you talk about education, you talk about you didn't do very well at school because you thought you were having a business handed down to you. And I come from a background that values academia highly. So my grandmother left her 3 children with nannies and went back to university and got her master's, and then became a very successful headmistress all those years ago when girls weren't educated particularly. So my family have always valued education hugely, especially for the girls, because it came so difficult to the women in the family. They had to really fight for it because their brothers were being sent to Europe and to America to kind of get their degrees and their medical profession. Most of them are medics, and the girls had to fight to get a place in education. So as a result of that, I think education has been very important, especially for the girls. So we've always kind of, I kind of had my path carved, if you like, that there was no option but to go to university, or that was what I understood by my kind of belief set that I had adopted from growing up. Yeah. And I do definitely value education hugely. But the one thing that I loved when I started my journey of personal revolution, when I was meeting entrepreneurs like you all over the place, was that many hadn't even finished school.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yet they had such successful enterprises, and they were so worldly, and they had a very different mindset to the people who were highly educated in my circle. And that is the one thing that was just so attractive for me. And that's
Yeah.
when I started thinking that maybe there is another option for me. Just because I've been educated, just because I'm a professional in one field, doesn't mean I need to stick to that. So value of education, great, but I think we do need to encourage this kind of broader spectrum of what do you want to do in our kids, rather
Exactly.
than drive them down a certain path.
I think I did 12 years at night school to sort of to catch up on the education bit, but I think not going through what I call traditional university, the standard path down which we're all guided to do. I never did that, and so I think there's a difference between education and knowledge. I think knowledge,
Definitely.
absolutely, because that comes from everywhere. Does it need to be in an academic structured framework? Well, sometimes, it is. As an engineer, I had to be trained to be an engineer. So there's an academic approach to all that, and other things that I did. But I do see a lot of people who go through the standard education system, and they come out with a degree in something, and two things. One, they never use it in their life and their career anyway, because they do it in sort of sports psychology or whatever, or dog singing or something like that. Some bizarre degree, and it's no use to them. But also it teaches them to think in straight lines,
Yes.
and they believe in a career that follows a straight path. And I've never seen a career do that, or a business do that. And that ability to be able to wander off the path a few times, I think that's a gift. So I'm glad I didn't go to university. I full respect to those who did, but it wouldn't have suited me at all.
And that's it. And I think you've just hit the nail on the head. It's about not staying in that lane, and that's what education in general teaches us. Even at a school age, they just I think they're getting better. My son is definitely having more outdoors play and more learning in the outdoor space rather than just in the classrooms. I think they are getting the value of learning through play, and
Absolutely, yeah.
at being adventurous and learning math and measurements and that sort of thing by actually being outdoors and measuring stuff. And
That's it.
they
Yeah.
are doing a lot of that, but it's just I think previously I can only speak for myself. I definitely had the creativity knocked out of me
Right.
by my education. So that's something that's really important to just keep a note of.
I think education does. It really, I think if you look at the education system, and this is probably a global phenomenon pretty much, the education system is designed to produce accountants, lawyers, bankers, administrators, managers, people to work in an office or a factory doing a linear sort of job and role. And when people start to think about being creative and doing something, whether it's art or dance or whatever it is, it's not encouraged. In fact, it's not on the curriculum of many high schools at all. So, they think the hierarchy is maths and languages and science and all this sort of thing. But at the bottom is, pottery, dance, fabrics, and
You're right.
all those sort of things. The creative things never, or hardly ever taught. So we get pushed into this linear path if we're not careful.
Yes. I'm hoping there's hope for the future generations, because
Absolutely, oh yeah, absolutely. There's always hope, always hope.
there's
It's
hope
just
for
a
the future
choice.
generations.
It's just a choice they have to make.
Yes.
To say, and a lot of people do. They make the choice to allow themselves to get off the cycle, whatever it is, and take the risk. And exactly. And we've all done it, And it's really scary. And I remember
Exactly.
being terrified. Well, the first day at I call it the frock shop, is the business. I walked into this business and I had no clue what I was doing, because it was totally new to me. Everything was new. And what I realized was, of course, that 2/3 of it are the same as any other business in terms of customers and cash and sales and all that sort of thing. But the people were totally different. And but it was fine. So take the risk, jump off have some fun. Because if it goes horribly wrong, if that job had gone wrong, what would have happened? Well, I'm going to go a job somewhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just take the risk, jump
Yeah.
off, have some fun, have a go, and see what happens.
Sometimes it's the biggest risks that pay off, right? But it takes a huge amount of courage to actually take the risk.
I think the biggest risk is not doing it. Actually, I think the biggest risk is standing still.
I love that.
But it is, because if you want to hit a target, you pick a stationary one. If you're a moving target, you can't get hit. So if you're dancing and you're moving and you're shape shifting through your career, it might feel a bit uncomfortable. But yeah, people who think they've got a safe, secure job have now learned over the last number of years. And look at COVID, the last few years, that this safe, secure 40-year career is not so safe and secure right now. They've been replaced by freelancers or whatever it is, or apps are coming through. And there's no such thing as safety and security. It's a myth in any role, in any job, pretty much. So yeah, may as well have some fun with it and go and try some things out.
I love it. I could go on speaking to you all day, and I'm sure we will speak again. But that's a really good place to leave it. Thank you for being my guest today. It's been a delight to speak to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.